Oh, you're right. All right. We were talking about, if you recall, that little story wherein life spoke to ordinary people and said that it could only, in the city sense, only speak to men on the basis of being enthusiastic, that is the energy, as it would appear to be in words, in the full diplomatic and metaphorical sense of speak to them with enthusiasm or with accuracy, but not with both simultaneously. In the United States, that's simultaneously. Now, a little more about that. Once you realize that life is not arranged to provide those kinds of conditions, then to be a kind of neural revolutionist, you have got to produce your own kind of inner scheme wherein you commune with yourself on the basis of that rare combo of enthusiasm and certainty, accuracy. Beyond any jokes about the Freudian and Western psychological idea of an unconscious mind, etc., we've been calling it the partner, and everybody realizes by now that your nervous system does talk to itself. It makes as much background noise as does any electronic consumer appliance in your home. But now consider, along the lines that we are temporarily mapping it, if you can learn how to arrange communication with yourself on the basis that what you are communicating, that the lines, what do they call it in the city? The channels of communication are both fraught with enthusiasm and certainty, accuracy. Think, ponder, consider that this would put your relationship with a partner on a completely new footing. Think about it, just at the ordinary level. What is all manner of uncertainties in life? What is it? We could have someone who has never heard of Western psychology. We could have someone who's heard of Western psychology and says, I ain't buying it. We could find a man who appears to be otherwise sane, who says, I don't care about the rest of you suckers, I ain't got no subconscious mind. All uncertainties. Every time that a person, which you're doing constantly, and you do not have to do it certainly actually, because you would almost be a living wreck if you are too uncertain on the actual basis. But on the factual basis, you're continually uncertain, which is part of the nature of being a factual-based creature at the secondary level. Every time you're uncertain, you've got an unconscious mind. Now I'm using it in my own sense. That is, you are talking to yourself. It doesn't matter what you think. If you were staying there and thought, let's see, I believe I will shoplift this item. And you think, oh, what would my mother think? Or, oh, what would my employers think if I get caught and it gets in the paper, vice president of tax firm arrested in Kmart for shoplifting women's underwear, let's just say. An ordinary person could say, all right, this is, a real ordinary person could be religious and say, well, that's a man's conscience. Somebody who might be more of a humanistic turn and less religious could say, that is the kind of struggle inside of a man's psyche between his civilized, whatever they call it, ego, and his uncivilized id, his childish, wanting to just grab something. And so it's a struggle about, should I do this, should I be civilized, and et cetera, et cetera. Note, anytime you're uncertain about anything, to take the first example that I made up, the guy could say, well, what would my mother think? So you could say that the man's saying, I want to do so-and-so. Or a man says, I believe I'll cheat on my wife. I'll go hit on that girl, but what if she found out? Boy, would she be mad. So an ordinary person, you could say, the struggle is not between him and himself in some way. His struggle is between he and his wife, or he and his mother, he and his religion, he and his God, or him. Because you could be saying, he is saying, boy, I'd like to cheat on my wife. I'd like to really roll that woman in the clover. But God, what if I get caught? What would my wife would give me mortal hell. I'll have to buy 2 new washers and dryers. But it is not. From a more specific operational level, it is not a struggle. No, of course, we're not talking to ordinary people. Of course, we're talking to you now. Ordinary people, they believe it's a struggle, or they believe it's different messages, maybe from their own crude nature, and then the voice of Gabriel, or your conscience saying, don't do that, or your mother going, no, that'd be horrible, or your wife saying, you did what? It's not, though. Think about it, it's not. You can look back as always on a factual basis and always say, well, it came from somewhere else. I've got no morals sexually. I told this woman in bed over here in a New York minute, but what if my wife found out? And if you could suddenly jump into this kind of scenario and you ask a guy, you mean you really, are you so up to date and hip that, I mean, you got no sense of morality in a guy nowadays? Well, for thousands of years people could do it, but somebody could say, oh, come on, give me a break. I want to hope my relationship and I love my children and my old lady ain't bad, but, Jesus Christ, what's a little sexy on the side? Morality, I'm too... Don't try to drag me in the past with that. They could talk like that, and then you say, well, why don't you do it? Listen, do you know the kinds of judgments that women are getting in divorce cases now, and et cetera? And so they could reasonably say, I'm not doing it because of something outside of me. And it could be because of God, because of what the Bible, the Quran says, what my mother taught me. I can't get away from it. And so they can point somewhere else. But note, even if that's true, you got to talk to yourself about it to put it into operation. It has got to go through this gatehouse. And so anybody that tells you that they do not have an unconscious mind or subconscious mind or a subterranean mind or whatever, anybody that tells you they don't talk to themselves, those people are terminally unconscious. I don't know how you ever talk to them for them to say, I don't ever talk to myself, because they're living in a coma. They can call it anything they want to, and that's why, or one reason I've been slaying it in with your partner, and I make little jokes, because you do not have to overtly mumble to yourself. You do not have to, people see your lips move like you're actually talking to yourself. But anytime you're uncertain, which is if you're alive, civilized, and thinking, the factual world, we've already been through this, is in a sense based on uncertainty. That is one of the driving dynamos behind the factual world, is it striving to be actual, to begin to approach the level of certainty that is native to acts. At least, just take the three good old acts we pointed out, or the basic three S's, the kind of absolutely inescapable minimal acts to keep you alive. Eating is a certainty. Not dining, not, well, I don't know, will I have one out of column A? Screw all that. Eating is a certainty. Sex is a certainty. If not you individually, for the race. Sleep, rest. Facts are striving. That is, we've already mapped out several possibilities of looking at this. That could be seen as the mechanical march of civilization. That could be seen as the overall striving of life to grow through this warp, through this soft spot in its body wherein man represents that little bad place, remember, in the finger of a rubber glove that's being squeezed with, we don't want to think about what, but it's man. For this, the secondary world to expand, it's not the world of acts expanding. It's not the primary world. We're still doing the same basic acts that our great. Do you ever figure out how many greats it is back to even the time of the Old Testament, our forefathers and mothers? It ain't that far. You think, boy, it's a long way off, but it's not. That should frighten some people because you think you're so hip and up to date. And as far back as, well, you don't go into it, I know. At any rate, all of this can be seen in a quite useful manner, I suggest. That the world of facts, the secondary world, it's never been analyzed this way, there's no need, but they are striving to reach the kind of certain condition, the kind of state wherein acts have an accuracy about them. That acts are unambiguous, relatively speaking. That nobody sane goes, should I eat or should I not? Not if you're hungry. It is only when it gets further out, expanded into the world that we're calling nowadays facts, for a person to say, should I eat double dessert when I get through today? Should I go ahead and order another pizza? I mean, if I get a second one, I get half price. That is, you're already full, or you're trying to lose weight. You understand, when it gets into that area, or if it's on the area simply of the genetic need for the race to continue, sometimes, some of you like to put it casually, if you've got the extreme horns, you don't decide, should I, if you've got the opportunity, should I avail myself of having sex with this other human being, hopefully? Should I do that, or should I not? It gets into areas about, should I have sex with my boss's wife while he's out of town? Should I have sex with this person who seems to be of some indiscriminate gender? It has to get into a factual before it's, you understand, before it becomes in any way uncertain. And of course, the more uncertain it is, as we were mentioning, the more enthusiastic, which is part of why people pick up each other in bars, places where they serve alcohol, because alcohol, even though I know it's listed in the city medical journals as a depressant, as all of you know, it has, generally speaking, out of the ordinary effects on most people's brain chemistry. That is, where ugly people who look like Fatty Arbuckle, even after he'd been dead for a few months, men can have a few drinks and turn around the bar mirror, and it suddenly strikes them that it's not completely unbased for me to say that from a certain, when the light's just right, and after 3 drinks, I sort of look like Marlon Brando back when he was about 25. Everybody knows that. But that is one of the reasons, back to where I was, that the more you get into factual situations, such as bars, no offense to bars, don't write me, any bartenders or bar owners, but it's to be somewhere, because alcohol, then you begin to get, although it's a depressant, you figure it out, you begin to get like enthusiastic. Or, as that great philosopher, I think Mickey Gilley said, don't the girls all look prettier at closing time? The more you get drunk, and most of the good-looking women, according to you, according to him, are sort of gone. You turn around, they're calling last call, and it's you and 2 or 3 women. It's surprising how enthusiastic you can get about this woman over here with an eye patch and a wooden leg. And you have to say, hey, would you like to go home with me? And she may say something like, I've been staying here all night and you hadn't said a word. I don't know, it just struck me. Well, and you suddenly will get enthusiastic. And don't any women with eye patches and wooden legs right now. All right? Like pretend it's a woman and she turns around and tries to pick up this guy, and it turns out he's a lawyer or a doctor, and she goes, ew. And how about that? Of course, now I'll have one-legged, one-eyed doctors and lawyers. I was going to say, I hate to deal in cliches, I was going to say, some people just can't take a joke, but I can improve on that and make it a Cairo. One guy said, some people just can't take a joke, and his partner or the kid said, what do you mean, some people? Back to what I was saying. Right quick, I didn't mean to stay here this long. But the whole nature of being civilized, that is one of the descriptions, you recall it, we hit of being civilized. The more that you're civilized in the ordinary sense, the more that you are operating from the brain as opposed to your gut and your genitals, the more you're civilized, the more actually you're uncertain. The more you are inaccurate in your thinking. The more civilized, and normally the more educated, they're not synonymous, but the more that you are sophisticated, educated, usually civilized, the more you seem to be uncertain even about basic things, such as capital punishment, abortion, sexual mores. You're in that relative, gradual spectrum of civilization and society. The more you get down to the level, let's pick on somebody else, of good old red circuit people. They're the ones that you walk into a bar and you say, I'm doing a survey, who in here believes that we should reinstate capital punishment in this state? And most of them raise their hand and say, I do. But even if they said we don't, which they wouldn't, but if they said we don't, at least you're not going to have people going, They'll say, yeah, put me down. Hell yeah, fry them bastards. Then you walk down the street and you go over to the college campus and you go over into the student lounge, assuming it's not a college of body and fender repair, And you get into there, and you ask them, you say, we're doing a survey, what do you think about? Of course, that's not the best example that some of you might know, because some of them would be at that age still fried up and be saying, yes, we're against it. But if you went into, let's say, the faculty lounge, it's not that the other doesn't have any validity, but the faculty lounge would be a little bit better. And if you went there and said, we're doing a survey, are you in favor of reinstating capital punishment in this state? And now you, you have these educated, sophisticated, et cetera, people, and you ask them individually, you'd get a whole lot, as you should know, of, well, on one hand, or sometimes I think, or sit down here, let's have some coffee. That's an interesting, I'd like to discuss that. In fact, some of us were only debating that last night. And if you were being paid by the number of interviews you do, you say, well, you know, come on, bastard, you know, give me an answer. The man said, wait a minute, you're talking about taking human lives. Don't just say, give me an answer. Sit, calm down. You follow that. It is a sign. It is normally unanalyzed, at least from this view, but uncertainty at a certain quite real operational level is unnoted proof, evidence of one's civility. Is to be uncertain. The more you're dealing with facts, the more you're uncertain, relatively speaking, to those that, like I was saying, if you were just dealing with, don't bricklayers write me, a bricklayer's lounge, where all the bricklayers hang out, you know where it is, and you said, should we have capital punishment? They're going, yeah. You're not going to have any, we got to go, wait a minute. Wait a minute. That is one of, may I say, that is one of, I would consider it, one of history's more pressing moral dilemmas. No. So now back to talking to the would-be revolutionist. There is a new arrangement wherein you communicate with yourself, in the sense we're talking about, that you don't have to actually be talking to yourself, but in the sense that everyone else, the more that they're dealing with facts, which you got to be to even get around today, you got to be more and more civilized, more and more dealing with the reality that is factual based. Even if you say you don't like it, you got to deal with it. You got to motivate, navigate through it. The more you do that, the more you are filled with feelings of uncertainty. That's just the nature of factual life. I can't even read the damn 1040 form. Used to I could do my taxes. Now I can't even figure out, what does it mean? Should I try and chisel over here? Should I try to do this? The more you're dealing with a factual world, the more you're considered, the more you're faced with things that are considered in this city being moral dilemmas, just being the complexity of life that sometimes I just don't know what to do. Sometimes I just feel like giving up. They're not talking about acts. Nobody says, I just feel like giving up. They're not saying, I feel like I'm going to give up eating. We're talking about ordinary, sane people. Or they don't go, I'm so sick of the rat race, I'm just going to quit screwing. I'm sick of sex. It just takes up too much time. Nobody says that. Or, boy, I'm so busy. It's just go, 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 go. The only thing I know to do, I'm not going to sleep anymore. That's what nobody ever says that. It has to get into the areas about, what should I do? You're talking to yourself. We're being magnanimous to say you're talking to yourself. Their energy is running through you and is now up at the high end of the nervous system, relatively speaking, wherein, we're calling it the factual world, that things are not as certain as they are in the actual world. And the more they are certain, relatively speaking, the less enthusiastic you are about them. And if you are enthusiastic about it, the less they're certain. To do this kind of stuff, whatever the hell it is, you've got to put the whole conversation, this communication, on a new basis. That you have got to be dealing with that Reva aris, the rare bird that is the combination that the city said it can't do. That you have got to be able to communicate with yourself on the basis of both enthusiasm and accuracy. You, the individual, because life is not provided, life is not needed. I would suggest that you give some additional credence to the little story that the city said. I know it's just a tale, something somebody made up around here. But the city has said, I can speak to you with enthusiasm or with accuracy, but not with both, not simultaneously. So once you know that that is not provided, once you simply realize it, that life is not needed, it would in fact be counterproductive to ordinary people. That if you took away the areas wherein facts were run, the factual-based world was run on the basis of enthusiasm, you took that away, then the factual world, the secondary world, you would have let the air out of the tires. It wouldn't roll anymore. If you couldn't be enthusiastic about things that from one view are not literally necessary to stay alive, who's going to buy a damn new car? Huh? Who's going out and spend $20 for a haircut? And all you got to do is, take a pair of scissors, you save $12. Plus, or just let it grow. Who the hell cares? Yeah, but wait a minute. We're talking about, I know what you're talking about, but to yourself. There is let me just put it a little more directly, that it would have to be fresh, have to be non-polarized thinking processes. The information, the ideas themselves, as you know, is not the important thing. If you ever get stuck on that, I'm just giving everyone credit, you're not there. If you're stuck on that, then you're back to the idea that there is secret knowledge somewhere. That's what's making people itch. They get interested in stuff like that. It's the process. It's not some noun somewhere. It is not a commodity. It is the process. But it has to be a new process in you. It's not going to be provided in life at any time because life is not needed out there. It would be counterproductive. But this kind of information, if you can do it individually, it is, by its very nature, both enthusiastic and accurate. You don't have to try to do it. All you got to do is be able to begin to think, to be able to look around and see stuff, and not see it through polarized intellectual processes. To be able to see it not running off the energy that everybody else is running off of, including you. And when you can do that, you don't have to then say, well, I feel like maybe I'm sort of in a new place. I'm not really back where I was nailed down and where I grew up. And so now I will try and be enthusiastic and accurate. You don't have to try. You're then dealing on a whole new basis with what seems to be yourself. It is unnatural to the city. As I said, the city does not need it. You don't need it. I keep saying the city, as always, you don't have to look out there. All you got to do is look that you're 25, 35, 45 years old. Your mother, your father, the president, everybody else, they make it on the basis, so you don't need to be able to think in some way on a basis that is both enthusiastic and accurate. It's not needed. It is, in fact, not only unnecessary, but that kind of information, to be able to think both enthusiastically and accurately would be too accurate for life's everyday needs. That's what I meant. That's why I said it would be counterproductive for life. I'm not going to stop and go through that because it gets into a five-dimensional description of things that cannot happen, and it's almost impossible to talk about, but it would be counterproductive to life. If this started on some kind of widespread, if in some way somebody could create a true anomalistic situation that you get a whole bunch of people without life knowing it to start doing this, which you can't. But that's what I wanted you to see, because to be enthusiastic and accurate would create a kind of neo-accuracy that would just overload life. It would disrupt civilization. It would disrupt the ordinary march of factual progress. Well, think about it. I shouldn't have to make this sound like a sermon. A quick way of putting it, what if there is a greater reality? What if we are a three-dimensional part of a greater reality? All right? And what if this is striving, there's a greater reality, and everything keeps expanding like a balloon, let's say, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger? What if people saw, a whole bunch of people saw what it was? You do understand it would stop at that area. It would stop them doing the kind of things that from one view you could say, well, all of this over here is folly. And it might be to you. You might now see it in a different way and go, well, I'm not driven by that. But if suddenly, which you can't do, but if you make a whole bunch of people go, hey, you're right, I used to criticize and laugh at it, but it's no longer funny and I'm no longer a critic, I simply see it's not necessary, you would have closed down a large part of the city. You would be too accurate. for life's needs on a large scale. All in all, to have this kind of communication, this kind of new relationship with your, I'm saying your partner, you do understand it is simply, you look at it like you're an electrical appliance plugged in to life's nervous system. Then everything, a stereo, I don't care whether you paid $59 at a drugstore or whether you paid $7,000 for a Mark Levinson or one of Carver's handmade tuners and amps. The son of a bitch makes noise. Your toaster makes noise. Your microwave oven makes noise. Electricity makes noise. So look at it that your nervous system, what you left in, what do they call it? The brain, your mind, makes noise. You are, talking to yourself. The energy comes in, the energy goes out. It is the basis of man in making up, discovering AC current. You have put the footing, that is, one simple explanation or verbal description, you are now taking the flow of energy coming at your brain that you normally think of as, I'm having a thought. You know, that sort of thing. Or, yes, that's me. Or, wait a minute, let me consider that. You know, that sort of thing. Or, wait a minute. Let me tell you what kind of guy I am before you go any further. The relationship between all that, I was going to give you sort of a wrap-up for that paragraph. You could look at a pertinent motto that if you could change the way in which you are communing with yourself, the way in which you are at a small level, an ephemeral end of a little tributary of life's energy coming out in you, and it manifests itself as you going, yes, I'm me. You know, that you're a guy, and that's the kind of guy you are. If you change the relationship of what you understood that to be, then I was going to try and give you a pertinent motto. It would then be, let us say, you'd be somebody dealing in facts, dealing in new facts enthusiastically and with accuracy. Dealing in new facts. If you recall back now a few days, with no annoyance, no disturbance. Dealing with new facts, no guilt, no prejudice, no cost, and new facts with no corruption and no limitation. Because that vis-a-vis ordinary thinking is exactly what it would be, no limitation. Because as long as you are left with the polarized, the dual possibilities that you can think, that you can talk to yourself, that life can speak to you and through you on the basis that, all right, I can talk to you accurately, or that you think to yourself, I can think about this sort of accurately. The other way is, I seem to react to this or think about it, talk about it enthusiastically. That, anything that gives you limited choices, you understand, by its very nature, is limited. It's only ordinary intelligence that believes that one of them is so superior that any question of limitations is, forget it, which is the basis of all religion at the intellectual sense, the brain sense. As well, it'd be, you got your choice in life. You can be a Muslim or you can be an infidel. It's up to you. If you're an infidel, hey, forget it. You may live a few years, but it's going to be nothing but bad luck, bad luck, bad luck. You're going to die. You won't get to go with the rest of us and get all the women, all the fun. To be a Muslim, to be a Jew, Christian, Buddhist, is to open up the heavens, the cosmos. And it's not true. But notice that's the basis of it. Always, if you take one choice over another, but it's not. With ordinary people, it's fine. That serves the needs for life. But all of you will assume that you do know that to be a Jew, Christian, Republican, Presbyterian, piano tuner, to be anything on the basis that this is what I should be on the as opposed to something else. And thank God I got away from that. Now I'm free. All my life I wanted to be a one-legged Presbyterian piano tuner. And thanks to that accident and my conversion and a few other things and going to night school. I am now free. That's what I have dreamed of being ever since I was a child, and now I'm there. We'll assume that you understand that is not freedom. That is not revolutionary, new revolutionary neural ground. Only freedom has got to be something with no limitations. At least we're talking about here. Not from actual life, not from act-based life, but from here. And for that to be true, it has got to be to where you're not limited, that I can either think in a way that seems to be sort of accurate, and I feel kind of certain about this, but there are other areas that, Jesus, I don't think me or anybody is all that certain, but God damn, it interests me. I like to think about it. That's a fine hobby. That's known as being alive. It's known as being in the city. But to be able in a kind of a way to put them together, which is actually to be free from them, but to be able to put them together where there is no dichotomy, is in a sense to be able to you, that you're thinking, now that you are a creature privy to facts, which everybody is, remember, that you no longer feel as though you're in some way suffering from them, or that you're corrupted by them, or that you should be freed from them. Remember, that's the last couple of weeks, trying to wrap up some of it. It is a kind of now thinking that you are not corrupted, you're not disturbed, and relatively speaking, it is a kind of factual life to you personally that is without the ordinary limits. And it can't be explained, it can't be proven, nobody can preach about it. Because ordinary people, as you should know, because you got some ordinary people in you, yes, you too, is in here. It says, no, that's not true. Because all you'd have to do, said an ordinary person, and they either fall back on religion or just some sort of humanistic philosophy that say, well, we all have limitations, but we bring them on ourselves. We bring them on ourselves by being narrow-minded, by being prejudiced, by being unthinking, by being uneducated. That all you have to do is kind of open up your mind and become a blank. I mean, you fill it in, a Presbyterian, a philosopher, and then you'll be free, but you're not. As long as you got to be free from something, you're not free. You should know that, don't you? Well, boy, it'd certainly be better to have a lifetime job, a position, being a guard in a prison than to be a prisoner. Right. Yeah, but I'm free and he's not. Well, I understand that. But as long as you're just free from something, and if you call that freedom, which is all right, you're right and I'm wrong if you're ordinary. But if you're free from something, if you get free from something and then you say, now, I have some freedom because I'm freed from that, wake me when it's over. Well, that's like the good old Kairut, we found out before. I'm making a lot of progress in life. Well, how so? Well, used to, I was an alcoholic and I quit drinking. I'm making a lot. Used to, I would carry around a pencil and I'd stick it in my nose and I'd jam it until I bleed. But I quit that. Well, as always, so you people made me go too far with the example. The ordinary one that nobody notices is the feeling in life of being sick, of progress, is that just ordinary, mechanical, apparently inescapable hardships fall upon you, like being sick, or just a real bad cold, maybe enough that makes you lose some work and lose a few days' pay, and get over it. You pull yourself together and you feel, now by God we're getting somewhere. It's like you had a flat tire and you fixed it, and now you feel like, now, boy, I'm on the, tell Aretha Franklin, got the way, I'm zooming down the highway of life in progress now, and all you did was like, you fixed a flat tire. That is the kind of communication I was talking about internally that is not possible to an ordinary person, because with them it is. And with you at the ordinary level, that you do feel as though, well, I quit a real bad habit. Boy, I'm getting somewhere. You got to think about it. Because if somebody is a drunk and seem to, in their liver, swelling out like this, and they have to carry along a little unicycle, and they quit drinking, and if they say, I feel better, who's to say? We're going to say, no, you don't. They say, I'm glad I quit. You can say, well, I'm glad for you. If you're glad, I'm glad. But to call that progress, for a man to fly you by in a car, and he's hollering, boy, look at me now, I'm rolling. I had a flat back there, and I was sitting there, and I fixed it. Ha, ha. And an hour before that, he passed, and he was doing fine. But as progress, that he had a problem, and he seemed to have overcome the problem, and now he's back to where he was, and that's progress. That's what I was trying to get you to see. It's not cynicism, of course. At the ordinary level, all progress, everything at the ordinary level here in the factual world is based on alternating current, polarized energy. Anytime that apparently, ooh, I turned my ankle. I can't run now. I'd like to run every day. And it takes 4 or 5 days. You have to take aspirin. Maybe you have to even go spend a couple of bucks that actually wasted to buy yourself a super duper up-to-date ace bandage. Maybe you have to go to a doctor and spend some money for him to look at it and says, yes, you turned your ankle. Yeah. But then you get over it. And a week later you're out running and it's like, I've gotten somewhere. And the truth is, a week before that, you're in the same condition, you're out running at the same time, feeling good, and now here you are back again. It's like, I'm making progress. You're back where you were. I got the tire changed. Boy, I'm on the way now. This is, hey, we're getting somewhere. You're getting back where you were. Nothing wrong with that, but you have got to see that is not progress. Progress would be to be free from the idea that I got to be free from something. That progress is fixing a flat tire. Well, it would be, as I was suggesting, a new motto that would be pertinent to what we're talking about. That you're dealing in new facts enthusiastically and with certainty. And you're dealing with new facts, that is your new thinking process, is in no wise makes you feel disturbed, makes you feel as though you should be free from it, that you feel guilty about any of it, that it cost you anything, that is you replaced one thing with another, you put on a fresh, good tire out of the trunk, and you put your old one back there. That's the cost. Yeah, but now I'm getting somewhere. You know, I took 50 cents out of one pocket and I put it in this pocket. But before I came here, my left pocket was empty. Think about it, empty. Never mind 50 cents. Why should I be so chintzy? Your left pocket was empty, and you decided after reading a little Sartre, you thought, why not? Maybe a little John Stuart Mill even. And you decided, why should my left pocket suffer? I'm getting somewhere in life, so you reach in your right pocket and you take out, forget that 50 cents, I don't know. You take out a 50. Let's say and you take it out and you put it in that pocket. Tell me that's not progress, goddammit. A man had a flat tire and he fixed it. Got 4 wheels on the ground, 1 in the trunk. 1 on the ground went out, stopped, went in the trunk, took 1 out there, put it up on the right front. That was the bad one. The guy wasn't an idiot. Put the bad one in the trunk. Now he's got 4 good ones on the ground and a bad one in the trunk. Now he's off and I'm getting somewhere. Real, if there was such a thing, individual, silent, unprovable progress, change, and one individual, it has no such illusionary cost. You don't replace 1 flat tire with a good one in the trunk and say, well, I'm getting somewhere. You do it, yeah. Sure, I don't have to keep beating this. Or my left pocket was empty and I took the 50 I had in the right pocket, and just as a show, just to prove, I put it in my left pocket. I'm getting somewhere. The cost was you took it out of your right pocket. There is no way around it if you're thinking at the old neural building site. There was another story that we hit recently, if you recall, that some of you seem to like. I was going to make 1 or 2 comments about, and that was that if you invent your own world, then you can also invent all of the stuff that doesn't exist in it. Now, I let that go in a car route, and so many people went, and I thought, well, perhaps. I checked the car route, and he said, I go ahead and make a comment. Now, ordinary sane people, to begin with, when the little car route said, if you invent your own world. Now, even an ordinary sane, city-sane person, you understand, is not going to invent their act-based world. That's suicidal at worst. And at lesser degrees, it'll have you put into a home with no shoelaces and no matches. You do not, ordinary city-sane people do not invent their own world on the act-based level. You do not. You simply do not. It would be from everybody else's view, not any objective view, but from what its prevailing view is, you would be living in a dream world. You'd be operating under delusions. You would be self-destructive, because the act-based world is simply what it is to keep the primary level of humanity going. So a man does not invent that. If he tries, it's a form of suicide. It's a form of self-destruction. It is unprofitable because you're fooling with things that there is no improvement on. There's no place to rearrange sex or eating. Not profitably. But when it gets into the fact-based world of man, the arrangement, I think it's safe to say, is otherwise. To take it in a very direct verbal manner, you could just say that life is not arranged for any sane segment of life's body via man to invent their own act-based world. Remember, we're still springing from the line that if you invent your own world, then you can also invent the things that do not exist in it. You would not be inventing an act-based world, but everybody, in a sense, is inventing the fact-based world, the fact-based reality. I must engage in a bit of introductory. One good thing about having 4 minutes, you can't do a lot with an introductory comment. You can do 4 minutes, but we need perhaps right quick, a bit of introductory sarcasm. Since we already used the line, if you invent your own world, then you can invent the stuff that doesn't exist in it. Should we all stop for a moment, since it's the weekend, and have just, like sometimes you want to have a drink or just have a naughty thought on your own, and just go ahead and engage in a little sarcasm just for a minute and just mull upon the description, a man inventing his own reality. I mean, it sounds all right. It could pass as being some kind of probably higher level philosophical New Age insight. That's true. We all invent our own reality. Yes, that's true, sir, in the same way that you gave birth to yourself. Is that correct? Let me try that. Just because a person is not sarcastic ordinarily doesn't mean that they can't be. See, they didn't expect it. So, even though I use the term that if you invent your own reality, that's right. In the same way that we don't have to look anywhere, ask you, where'd you come from? How's your mama and them? You ain't got no mama and them. If you invent your own reality, you are your mama and them. You gave birth. Now, don't we all feel better? Plus, we got 2 minutes left. So much for the intro. Well, down to a practical, operational level. The reason I did that little sarcasm is, even though I use the term to get you started looking in a certain direction, to say that even though no sane person, life is not arranged, that no sane, ordinary person invents their own act-based reality. That is, you don't fool around with just the world at the primary level. If you do, by ordinary standards, you're insane. You're nuts, and at a personal level, you're self-destructive. You're going to be eating nails and trying to have sex with garbage trucks while they're still moving. No, you do not, it's suicidal, literally, and it would be for life, for men to try and invent their own act-based world. But fact-based would seem to be that people do, that life has run the energy so that we do invent the fact-based world. But that was the point of the sarcasm, is even though that sounds, if you don't think about it for a second, it sounds, yeah, that's all right. What you're dealing with, as opposed to all the sarcasm and the hand gestures, is making you're supposed to go, oh yeah, I know I don't invent my own reality. Because if you do, then you know what you're going to say next. And of course, none of you have taken me up on that $2 million offer to tell me what you're going to say next. Still got the check. No, I left it in my left pocket in my other pant. Well, I was going to point down to a practical level. Here's what happens. If you accept, and although you think, if you were following what I started saying, that man could be inventing his own reality, but if you accept the invented factual secondary world, it's like a mental Levittown. It's the one that life hands you. It's already prefabbed. For those of you too young, that was the original look-alike. It was original suburbs after WW2. But if you accept that, it is a kind of mental Levittown. It's already prefabbed. It's already been framed out before you got there. And it's like you're just born in this structure here in your own neural neighborhood that you're in Levittown. If you accept that as being your reality, and in that neighborhood, then what you've got to do is you also must accept the blandness of it. You've got to accept the uniformity of it. You have got to tolerate the lousy landscape and the sporadic street lighting because it's you. And you could even hear me or somebody else reading a book that everybody invents their own reality. You can go, oh, that's true, and I could wax on about it in some way that everybody, because of the psychological shoves and pushes and traumas of their childhood and because of what's happened to them because of perhaps one or two small genetic weaknesses here and there, it comes out, and everybody's view of reality is slightly different than everybody else's, is what makes us different, and so in a sense we all invent our own reality. What you have taken is Levittown, and we're out of time. We'll pick up some other time.